I am Deanna LaRue. I'm the founder of TimeWise Financial since 2005, so almost 20 years. And our goal for today is to go beyond the money. So, learning ways to protect our identity and our accounts so we can have all of that money, but to make sure it doesn't get taken from us. And joining us today are Kimani Woods from our office, and she's going to help monitor the chat. So if you have any questions along the way, we can save them to the end um, and make sure we get through all of the content, and Kimani can help us with that. And also joining us today is Luke Campbell. Luke works with one of our educational partners, Eagle Life Insurance, and Eagle has done a lot of research on this particular topic. And so we're really excited to have Luke joining us today to share everything that they've learned. And then at the end, I'm going to hop back in and let you know some of the ways that we are also enhancing security for our clients as well. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it right over to Luke and let him get started. Thanks, Luke.
Thanks so much, Deanna. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for choosing to spend some time with us today. I really am grateful for the opportunity to speak with you all. As Deanna mentioned, so I have the great opportunity to work with financial advisors across the Southeast, talking and speaking on not just retirement protection strategies, but anytime we're talking about money in motion or our money, our finances, we obviously want to be very mindful or do the best that we can when it comes to securing our personal information and overall just preventing fraud. I took a snapshot of this today, actually. I thought it was interesting that we were getting on today's call, and this was one of the first things that popped up on my kind of news feed today. It was a headline of an article. It said, trending, the number of adults who have lost $100,000 or more to fraud has tripled since 2020. So these headlines are top of mind. I'm sure that you all have seen them, if not in the last week, definitely in the last month or the last couple of months. And that's really what we're going to base the context of today's conversation about. Typically with these presentations, even though we're virtual, in our business, it's often real serious. We're talking about money. We're talking about your personal information. It can be a daunting topic. So I want to just ask everybody, take notes, lighten up. You don't have to mute your phones necessarily or even put them away. We're actually going to try to keep it fairly interactive today. We will have a portion of the presentation where we actually pull out our phones and try to give you all some useful tips that you can do to even prevent fraud or protect yourself from scammers on your phone and just giving away your data. So we will get interactive there. For those of you that didn't jump on, we opened it up with just an interactive show of hands. Who in here has been impacted by fraud, either personally or someone they know? And that could be anything, as simple as or as extreme as full identity theft, but even a data breach, credit card fraud, phone and email attempts. Typically when I do this live, like by the end of it, every single hand in the room is up. It's definitely more and more prevalent. It's something that is a part of our everyday lives, and that we just have to learn how to kind of deter these cyber criminals the best that we can. So today is all about that. It's about staying one step ahead. And with that, we're going to get into today's agenda and really kick things off. So the agenda for the next 25 minutes that I have with you all, we're going to start off with a high-level overview of the internet and fraud. I'll just warn y'all, there can be some eye-opening stats. My goal is not to scare you, but to just lay it out there and know that you have personal decisions you can make. There's no right or wrong to anything that I'm going to go through today. It's really a matter of risk, right? What level of risk are you willing to take on? What level of risk are you willing to open yourself up to potentially? So all a personal decision. But after we go over the high level of internet and fraud, we're really going to dip into the bulk of today's presentation. About 80% of our time will be spent on deterring if we can discourage fraudsters altogether to just move on in the first place, then we've done our job. So we're going to spend the bulk of the time there. We'll then talk about identifying points of vulnerability. And lastly, we'll spend a couple of minutes on just protecting yourselves from the impact that fraud can create if it does in fact occur. And then finally, we'll wrap it up. So jumping into today's agenda, first, we're going into the internet and fraud today. So I'm going to put myself on the clock here on this slide. Will take about 60 seconds. What you see is a snapshot of the internet today. The goal of this slide is really to show you kind of the ubiquity of the internet. It's no question, it's all around us. It's engulfed every single part of our daily lives for the most part. 4.9 billion people worldwide are using the internet. That number goes up every day. Almost half of consumers are using mobile banking as of 2021. I think we'd all argue we have banking logins. We're accessing our bank accounts on a mobile app today. That number has gone way up since 2021. And then you see internet usage by age, basically up through age 50 to 65. Everything above that age range is well into the 90s, north of 95%. You're on, you're active, you're using the internet. At 65, that number seems to drop down a little bit, but over 65, that number seems to drop down. Listen, I know my mom and her friends, they know what my friends and their kids are doing more than I am because of social media. So I can attest personally that 65-year-old age range and up, they are active on the internet. I would argue that number has gone way up as well. But I talked about 60 seconds. So I'm on the clock. And in the last minute that we went through this slide, that's what you see on the toggle wheel over here. So what has occurred on the internet every single minute? And I typically point out a few names on here. Obviously, these are all brands, names, images that we're very familiar with. Couple that I like to point out. So Google, in the last 60 seconds, there were 2.4 million searches on Google. Snapchat, for those of you, or especially your kids that are on Snapchat, 3.47 million Snapchats were created in the last minute. Facebook jumps off the page to me. In the last minute, there were 11,000 fake or fraudulent Facebook profiles removed from Facebook, 11,000 in the last 60 seconds. So that's just high level overview, some stats points on the internet today. Getting a little bit more granular, we're going to look at the key data breaches that we've seen over the last few years. This is just 3 of them, guys and gals. I mentioned you log online, you look at your emails, like you've probably personally been impacted. Again, these are just 3 here. I know names that we're all familiar with or that we've seen in the headlines just in the last 12 months. The CrowdStrike outage impacted almost all of us. AT&T, there were nearly 73 million AT&T users who had their data breached. There's a big healthcare breach. Car dealerships were almost crippled and shut down. Car dealerships were working on paper for about 2.5 weeks at one point this year. It's just something that's very prevalent. There were 4,100 data breaches, releasing over 22 billion customer records in 2023 alone. So again, it happens every day. My goal is not to scare you, just to kind of lay some of this out there and know that it occurs. The 3 big ones that you see on the screen here, Equifax in 2017, that was a full scope of people's information that was released: name, address, date of birth, social security. We will circle back to this number. So maybe just remember 145 million Americans were impacted by Equifax. I remember where I was when that one happened. Capital One, 100 million. SolarWinds, maybe not as well known, but it was government agencies, and it actually went undetected for months. So doesn't matter who you are, what type of company, these things happen. The real goal of this slide is, yes, to get more granular on the data breaches, but also to focus on how the system works. So if you go back 10, 15, 20 years, these organizations would hack and exploit your data. Personally, it took, I guess, a longer amount of time, and it maybe wasn't as prevalent. So why has it become so prevalent today? And it's largely due to the value of your data on the black web. So you see here the value of your data. These organizations are essentially hacking, gathering your data, having these breaches, and then they're packaging and selling your data. They're not actually personally using it. So again, you see those numbers here: social security number, $4 on the black web, online banking logins, $40, credit card details, all the way up to a full range of documents as high as $1,000. So your data definitely has value on the dark web, and it is why many of these folks are so relentless when it comes to the calls, the emails, the accessing your data. So again, moving on and continuing to get a little bit more granular. Last slide on the opening here, identity theft here. We all think of it as full kind of catch me if you can, or we're fully taking on somebody's identity. That's not always the case. It's just using somebody's data as a method of financial gain. So that could be fully assuming your identity, or as little as just packaging and selling some of your identity, right? But the stats don't lie. The numbers definitely jump off the page. Nearly 15 million Americans were affected by identity theft in 2021. Every 14 seconds, someone in the US has their identity stolen, totaling losses of $24 billion in 2021. Again, that number goes up each year. And the big one that jumps out to me is the victims of identity theft, full scope identity theft, spend on average about 330 hours attempting to clear their name. We're all busy on this call. I know even 30 minutes out of your day is a lot, so thank you. 330 hours, you divide that by an 8-hour workday, that's essentially like 8 working weeks, almost a full quarter of your working life. So it doesn't all happen at once, obviously. It could be 5-10 years down the road. You go to file for credit or take out a loan, you're impacted. But time is money, time is of value to all of us. And we just really want to avoid having those problems down the road, which is why we're going to jump in. So what can you do? What can you do to prevent becoming the victim of identity theft, fraud, or your data, personal information being released? Again, you can deter, identify, or protect. We're going to spend the bulk of our time on deterring. So understanding the vulnerabilities in the first place. Me personally, like when I get into this or got into this field, I think of these cyber thieves, these fraudsters. I picture like the Matrix down in a little dungeon of a basement. There's screens everywhere, and they're, super sophisticated criminals. It's not always the case, guys, which is why we're going to go through this in 3 parts. So number 1 is no tech, very simple. We're looking at mail, paper statements, wallet, purses, things like that. Then we'll get into low tech. That's your credit cards, passwords, and social media. And finally, high tech, where we'll actually pull out our phones and we will get interactive there. So beginning with no tech, you see here just the number 1 thing with low tech or with no tech is reducing your paper trail. That's the main goal. Reduce your paper trail to your house, to your mailbox, to your wallet. There's really no reason we should be carrying around in our wallet like personal identifying information, bank account information, social security cards. Don't fall victim to that. It seems simple, but people still do it. I hear the stories every day. When it comes to the mail to your house, average American receives 41 pounds of mail, junk mail, each year, half of which is never open, and many of which contains information about yourself. So when it comes to these solicitations for credit cards, catalogs, just general junk that we all receive, you see these 2 blue bubbles here on the screen. You can, and again, we have a brochure that we'll send you all after this that does have a lot of this information in there if you're not able to jot it down. You can go to www.optoutprescreen.com. That will reduce your pre-approved credit card offers. I have heard of people who, had their information attained on the dark web, call it a social security number or some of their info, and they had stolen out of their mailbox a credit card offer, and they successfully opened credit cards in their name. It is something that can happen when your data has been exposed, and most of our data is out there on the web. So just, you can go out, you can reduce a lot of these credit card offers by calling or logging on there. Catalogchoice.org, you can reduce many of the catalogs that come to your house. I heard a story, again, I've given this presentation for the better part of the last year and a half. I've heard a story about a or a magazine subscription being stolen out of someone's mailbox. They saw that it was due to renew coming up here in, say, January. The fraudster called that subscription company to verify the credit card information that was on file. Somebody working at that subscription unknowingly or unwillingly gave them some payment information, and they were able to process fraudulent charges. So again, it's no tech. It doesn't happen every day, but we want to just limit our paper trail at all costs. Shred your personal documents that have identifying information that you do get in the mail. My team would tell you, if you don't have a crosscut shredder or a micro shredder, or if you bought your shredder that you have at your house 10 or 15 years ago, it's most likely a straight cut shredder. Throw it away. They're $30, $40. Go get a new one. Really anymore, you want to make sure that you have a micro shredder. And last but not least, just if you put on your bad guy hat, if you're sending outgoing mail, a lot of times it's maybe birthday checks to loved ones or business information. Just, know when you're putting that flag up on your mailbox, put on your bad guy hat. That's a big red flag jumping out in the air. So,
Luke, if I could jump in, I remember when you were sharing this with me earlier, and I had been thinking, like you mentioned, in the Matrix, that the mail wasn't really as much of an issue anymore, that it was more all of the tech thieves. So that was a good point, knowing that we still need to guard our mailboxes. And then I also just want to remind everybody that we do an annual shred event. So if you find yourself not wanting to go shred all of these documents immediately, then at least keeping some kind of shred box, and you can drop them off to us, and we'll take care of that.
that's great. Thanks, Deanna. All right, so moving on, deterring. So we're now moving into low tech. So this is going to be looking at our credit cards. So we walked through credit cards. There's really been an evolution in tech on credit cards, more than any of us ever really spend the time to think about, I think. But we're going from high risk, low risk to least risk. So I'm going to move left to right here. High risk, this is your old school. This is your magnetic strip. We all still have it, but just know that is your riskiest credit card transaction. So if you're swiping your magnetic strip, a full range of your data is being exchanged when you complete that transaction. So that merchant, whoever you're working with, is receiving your exact credit card number, your name, your information. With that in mind, you see a lot of these hackers that will put, it's called skimming devices over the magnetic strip. So you see it a lot at self-checkout. Think like Best Buy, Home Depot. You see it a lot at gas stations. I can personally attest, I spent a lot of time on the road covering the Southeast. I have been at a gas station down South Georgia where I went to swipe my card, which I shouldn't have done that in the first place, but I noticed that they didn't have any other options, right? They didn't have the tap, they didn't have it. I went to swipe and I noticed that it was a loose device on the top. So this was an actual gas station that was collecting data and most likely selling these credit cards online. So it does happen. Just the big thing here, if you're swiping, that should be a red flag. Really don't want to swipe our mag strips anymore on our credit card. Low risk. So this is we all received chips a couple years ago, our new credit cards, debit cards that have the chips installed. Those are NFC chips. It's called near field communication. You really have to be within a couple centimeters to make that tap work. You heard stories of years back of people walking through malls and picking up everybody's chip information, like scanning. Doesn't work that way anymore. So it is really very safe. The chips, your really only risk there is losing your physical card. And then your least risk is the EMV, where you're not just tapping your chip, but inserting it into the device. So if we can insert your chip, that's really what we want to do. Without going too deep, that's called EMV, Europay, MasterCard, Visa. In 2015, there was an act that was passed that puts the liability on the merchant if they don't have a insert and read chip machine. So if fraud occurs and they didn't have that, so like the gas station that I swiped, if I would have found out the fraud occurred or came from that gas station, they are fully liable for paying me back, I guess. So really insert your chip anymore. Most credit card fraud anymore is card not present. So it means not necessarily that you like somebody stole your card and they're actually processing the transactions with your card. It's typically they've obtained your data online and they're entering fraudulent orders online, typically less than $50 to $100. But again, keep an eye out. If you can insert your chip, you want to do that. Staying on low tech. So this slide continues on credit cards. The big thing, just a couple of things here. So we're all guilty of this. Designate one card for online or risky purchases. Many cases, you might click on an ad on social media or online, or you're working with a vendor that you're not familiar with, but you like the ad that popped up. If you designate one card for those purchases with maybe somewhat unreliable merchants that we're not used to, at least you're not exposing multiple cards online to that type of potential fraud. Watch out for skimmers, explore virtual account numbers if you can. I joke about this one. It's exposing families' Amazon habits all around the globe, but I would encourage it for everybody. All of our smartphones anymore, you can make it so that on your credit cards, it allows you to view transactions in real time. So just let your wife know, let your kids know, let your family know, your husband know. But set up transactions. So if you swipe your card, if there's any charge, just monitor all your accounts on a regular basis.
And Luke, by that you mean
Yeah.
downloading the app. So if you have an Amex card, download the Amex app, and then it'll pop up and show you what your purchase is. So you can then right away say that I didn't do that.
That's exactly right. Thanks for expanding on that. So anytime you have these credit card apps, you have to somewhat opt in for this. So it's, do you want notifications, and then how often do you want them on? And you can set limits. Maybe it's transactions over a certain amount, but they're pretty good at allowing you to customize and set up, again, back to what level of risk, how much do you want to really be monitoring these accounts? But
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think also I personally keep a copy of everything that is in my wallet and my husband's wallet. So if we did get our wallets lost or stolen, then we're not searching for, okay, what was it the Chase card? Was it the Amex? What's the 1-800 number? What's the account number? You can just immediately call all of those companies.
that's fantastic. I didn't mention earlier, so it kind of combines the no and the low tech, Deanna. So how many of us are guilty of carrying around in our wallet or purse every single credit card or many credit cards that we have, when really we're only using one or two on a regular basis? So our team would talk about just, maybe think about what are our main and primary cards and leave the other ones at home.
Absolutely.
Moving on, so passwords here. Your password is your first line of defense. We want to use multiple passwords. I know it can be a lot to handle, but there is a method to the madness. Minimum of 12 characters and multiple character types. You see this heat map here. It can be a lot for all of us when you're trying to create a new password and it's telling you it's not good enough, it's not strong enough. This is the reason why. So if you have, I'll just look at the far right column, maybe tough for some of us to see, but if you have numbers, uppercase, lowercase letters, and symbols, and it's at least, I will say 10 characters, some by brute force, a hacker can crack that in 2 weeks. If you use just 12 characters, two more characters, it takes 226 years. Obviously the math on there may not be perfect, but that's what they've shown. So that's the reason we want not only multiple passwords, but do include all the different character types that they're requesting, and even over the top some more. Use phrasing. It's easier for you to remember. The big thing that we highlight here, so anytime multi-factor authentication, we have whole slides on this, is available. Be sure to set that up. That is absolutely number one thing that you can do. With that in mind, your number one password that I would encourage every single person on here, I'll say two actually, that you want to go and check following today's call is your email account, your primary email account, or your personal email account. The reason being, so in many cases with all of your other accounts across the board, let's say you set up the same password for every single account. If you forget one of those passwords, where do they typically send your password reset? That is your personal account. That is really your first line of defense. Furthermore, if you say you have a login at southwest.com or some of the one-off random logins that you may not use all the time, but it's the same password as your personal email account, well, guess what? Southwest gets hacked. Your information's out there on the web. They learn your password to Southwest and they have your email login at Southwest. The first thing they might try is your email account, your Gmail account of, hey, well, we have his email. We just got the password. Now we can go reset the password on the email. And now we can brute force into everything to reset all these passwords to other accounts. So number one, check your personal email. Number two is make sure you know your Apple ID or your phone's setup and email. One of the most painstaking things you can do is lose your phone and then not know how to access your Apple ID or your Find My iPhone. So make sure both of those are set up when I'll just mention that while we're on our passwords. Can save you a lot of trouble, a lot of hassle down the road.
So Luke, we had a question about uh, two, actually. One was about what about password managers?
Yeah,
So like I think it was OnePass, LastPass. Do you have I know for my husband and I, we both have a LastPass app account and I have his login and then he has my login. So if something were to happen to his phone, it's just that extra security. I can go log in and have access to his Apple ID password. Have you heard anything good, bad, and different about these password apps?
I have. Well, yes and no. So I always tread lightly here. I get this question quite often. I don't necessarily promote, work for, or support any of these. I'm not like an expert on any one tool. Um, I've heard of two that come up often are OnePass and Keeper. I hear about a lot. I know that a lot of tech companies use Keeper, which they're usually kind of forward looking in how they deal with things. Those are two, again, just two that are top of mind. You want to kind of the good and the bad, right? You hear about all these data breaches, all these hacks online, and you think kind of, well, what's to keep these from potentially getting hacked? Most of them, fortunately, so they have very, I would say, just look into really how they protect their own data. Are they encrypted? Are they actually storing any of your data on their end? So most of these, like OnePass, Keeper, like it's in their agreement that they are not actually storing, keeping, or housing any of your data. It's kind of a one-way encrypted between you and your husband. So that's the real big thing that you want to make sure that just none of the data is being stored anywhere. In the case or the event that they are hacked, you want to make sure that they are very prudent and protected in how they go about their business.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So at least at minimum, maybe having a list of your most key accounts and the password and keeping that list in your fire safe, letting your loved ones know about that. I know, this year my mom had passed away. And so trying to get into her phone, I didn't have that password. I still haven't been able to get into it or her iPad. And so having some way to share that with your loved ones is great. We also had another question. I think this goes back to the credit card protection. Someone asked if, and I know we said save the questions to the end, but Luke, since you mentioned we could be interactive, I'm going to throw these out there. Someone asked, does tapping with your phone or watch enhance or decrease security in any way? So I'm guessing that's maybe like Apple Pay.
Yeah, that's all encrypted. So you're not actually exchanging your data. it's very, or I'd say fairly safe. I would be confident saying that. It's similar to tapping your card. Also typically obviously requires Face ID to open your phone. So that's a safe way to process a transaction. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, so we'll keep going. Social media. This one is top of mind, whether you're on social media or not. This is, if you're active on social media, this is for you. If not, this is for your kids, for your grandkids. It impacts all of us. Just think before you post. I'll run down the list. You all can see it on the page. Make your posts private. Don't give away your personal information, your name, your date of birth, your home address, your relationship status, all of these things that you see on here. Tagging precise locations. When we first went through this presentation, a couple of days later, I saw a friend of mine. They posted a picture of them on vacation, he and his wife. They tagged their precise location in real time. So we know that they're out of town. We know exactly where they're at. And then 3 posts before that, they had this nice, big, beautiful home that they had just purchased, saying, we can't believe we're moving into XXS on, 43rd Road. So they just told us they're out of town, and then they listed their brand new house that they just bought right down the street there. So I don't know, just think before you post. It all seems like no-brainers, but just keep things private. Make your accounts private, encourage your kids to do so, and spot the scams. You saw in that first slide today, there's all these fake accounts out there. You get friend requests from strangers. Tell your kids it's not, I know you want more followers, but in many cases, these folks that are, requesting from who knows what type of account or just a generalized account, you don't know them. They're typically trying to gain access or attract some data, if not sell you on something. Old friends reaching out, shopping on product posts. We mentioned using one credit card for those purchases. The quizzes, tell this to your kids and grandkids if any of you have seen the quizzes online or on social media. So often it's something along the lines of complete this quiz will tell you what superhero you are, or what baked good on Thanksgiving is your favorite baked good. Who knows, like what it might be. But we've all seen these. Oftentimes the questions to these, and most people I usually get head nods, are like, what street did you grow up on? What was your first pet's name? Those are typically the questions that we need to reset a password. So often these quizzes are very, very friendly up front, but there's an underlying motive to what they're actually trying to do. So keep that in mind. Let your kids know. If you have failed login attempts, be sure to keep your passwords on social media up to date. But active social media users are much more likely to be hacked or the victims of fraud.
Yeah, and Luke, what we're talking about today is more about us unknowingly getting our information taken. So on this social media route, something else that I'm hearing tons of is something called catfishing. And I remember when that show Catfish had come out, I had no idea what catfishing is. So just knowing that just because I tell my kids this, just because it's a cute 14-year-old picture of a 14-year-old girl, that may not be her. And so getting catfished and sending money, or getting, you've won the lotto, but you have to pay the legal fees. So just being very mindful of that side, which I think is probably a whole nother topic on top of this.
We could I would argue we will most likely have a whole presentation. Also just to your point on the AI side of things, create a safe word with your family. There's and when it talks to keeping your posts and your accounts private, it takes as little as 2 or 3, if not 1 video of you, your kids, your grandkids, a live video of their voice and their face and their interaction to now go and replicate or create voiceovers. So you're hearing a lot of fraud of people calling where you hear their loved ones, in an emergency type situation. saying they need money or things like that. So have a safe word. And the AI stuff, as great as it can be, it's creating, large openings for a lot of these scammers to go and create these types of frauds.
Absolutely. And on that note, that was something I was going to mention at the end. I'll just plug in now. One of our enhancements that we're going to be putting in place with our clients, you mentioned the safe word. We want to have safe words with our clients. So when they call, just in case of the AI capturing your voice, like you had just mentioned, it's, oh, okay, I know this is your voice, Sally, but is it really you? So what's your code word? So that's something that we'll be putting in place as well. But we have a code word for our family too. So
Great.
a great idea.
So we'll get this moving. This is the interactive part. We we get into high tech. So this is our phones right now, whether we all like it or not, our phones are they're tracking data. They're likely filled with apps that, whether that app has the true meaning of the app is for, tracking our location, like maybe an Uber or something. There's many apps that are tracking all these things that really have no reason to be tracking our location, our age, our gender, even as far as political leanings, things like that. So what we're going to go through or walk through here is just paying close attention to the apps that are tracking us. So we're going to use iPhones. Sorry for those on a Droid. We'll send you the steps afterwards. But if you want to, get interactive with us today, I'll encourage you, pull out your phone with me. You can swipe down on the main screen and we're going to click or go to our settings. Now there's been some updates on iPhones. So what we're doing here is we're looking at our privacy and data. So on this, it's actually for everybody. If you scroll down about halfway on your settings, you should see a blue hand that says either privacy or privacy and security, depending on when your last update was. So I'll give everybody a moment to get there. Once we click into privacy and security, it's the two tabs that are on the top. So specifically here, we're going to click on tracking in the orange. Every single app here that is highlighted green is tracking your activity, not just on their app, but across other apps and across all the websites that you visit. So do we want these apps to have all this information? In most cases, the answer is no. You can actually unclick those, or at the top where it says allow apps to request to track. If any of you wonder why every time you download an app, you get this pop-up that says, can we track your data? That's that toggle right there. So, turn that off if you want. There's really no reason for many of these apps. You obviously go and enable, like on Uber, yes, you're going to enable your location to be tracked when you're using the app. But for the most part, I think if you scroll through your list of apps, most of these apps have no business tracking all of your website data and history. So that's number one. Number two, who in here loves the spam text? We just came off of election season. I know I was getting a lot of spam texts. I'm sure you can all agree. So again, if we go back to settings, if you haven't updated your phone, you scroll down under settings and you'll click on messages. If you do have a more recent phone or an update, you'll scroll all the way to the bottom and click on apps, and then you'll scroll down to the M section and you'll click on messages. So I'll give everyone a moment to get to their messages. What this is meant to do is just limit, or at least give yourself a better ability to manage spam texts and block those folks. So once you're in settings, you scroll down towards the bottom, and we're going to look at about the fourth or fifth toggle up. It says filter unknown senders. If you turn that on, so we want that to be green, you filter unknown senders. Now, if you go to your messages, your inbox of messages, and you click filters at the top left, similar to your email inbox that you have, you can view all messages, known senders, or unknown senders. So typically on a weekly basis, I'll go in here, I look at all my unknown senders. If it's a colleague, somebody that I work with, and I didn't save their number, I'll save it at the end of the week. If it's not somebody, I know it's a spam text, I'll go and block or report all of those as spam and block those numbers. So this will deter or limit a lot of that spam text. It takes a little bit of work, maybe on a weekly basis, but you can remove those unknown senders. Last but not least is unknown callers. Now, This one may not be for everyone. I get a lot of calls from people that I don't necessarily have all the numbers saved, but if you're working in a smaller community or a smaller cohort of people that you communicate with on a daily basis, this is going to be great for you. You'll still get the call. So even if you do walk through this exercise, the calls will still come through. But what it does, this silences unknown callers and sends them to voicemails. If you don't have their number saved. So again, we go to settings, you scroll down to the phone, or you go to apps and scroll down under apps to your phone under the P section. Once you click on your phone, again, scroll down to the bottom, and about 6 boxes up, you see silence unknown callers. So if you turn this on, what this does is it's going to just silence those unknown callers. Again, be wary if you're getting a lot of calls from numbers you don't know, maybe this isn't for you, or it'll at least go to voicemail, but you will still get the call. It'll at least avoid a lot of those calls or send them through. We'll give you some more ways to deter these unknown callers in just a slide or two. And we are wrapping up the deter section. Last but not least is peer-to-peer payments. So this is your Apple Cash, your Venmo, your Apple Pay, Cash App, Venmo, Zelle. I'll even put cryptocurrency if any of you have that on here. Make sure that we have multi-factor authentication set up on these. Make sure that you go into your Venmo, your Zelle, these different apps, and require a PIN to be accessed. I recently heard a ton of stories on these, but one I'll share that's the most recent. Somebody had their phone stolen while they were out. It was stolen out of their pocket, out of their purse, almost a bump-in pickpocket type situation. The fraudulent user, apparently, so people are doing this, they act like they're taking a selfie near you. It captures your face and opens up your phone. They did not have IDs on their financial apps, and this person now had their phone open past the passcode, and they were able to send and complete multiple Venmo, Apple Pay, and Cash App transactions on behalf of this person. So seems crazy, but they have a system. These fraudsters, they have a plan, and they're very good at what they do. So just make sure we have those pins set up, Venmo, Coinbase, things like that. Moving on. So identified, these are very quick. We're going to wrap it up and pass it over to Deanna. This gets into just some of the things we want to identify or be alert of on suspicious activity. Kind of pulls everything together that we've discussed. So there's mailer bills that don't arrive. You can easily manage those, especially if you have things that are of significant importance that are being delivered to you. You see the top blue box there. You can sign up for USPS.com. Legally, USPS has to inform you or keep a record of every piece of mail that's delivered or delivering to your house. So you may not view it every day, but if you have something of importance coming, log on and check when's that coming and make sure that it arrives. Denials of credit for no reason. Obviously, big red flag. Everyone is entitled by law to one free credit report each year from the major credit reporting agencies. You see that on the bottom blue bubble here, annualcreditreport.com, or you can call. Just beware of scams. Check out your financial statements, set that up on your phone. You can go online. I haven't found a good way to say this. It's the middle blue bubble. The website is Have I Been Owned, or Pawned, owned, but with a P, I guess. So Have I Been Owned with a P.com. You can check your email and phone and see where your info has been leaked. Something that's kind of an interesting exercise to complete. On our side of the business, this relates to what we do a little bit more in the day-to-day. So Social Security fraud, I work with tax advisors, CPAs on a daily basis, and they will attest that this is a very real thing. 51,600 Americans had their Social Security payments stolen in 2021, $278 million of fraud. Again, that number continues to go up. Fraudsters are setting up fake websites, but even more so, they're just capturing or attaining your data on the black web, your Social Security, your identifying information. And what they're doing is creating a login, setting up an account on your behalf, or accessing your Social Security account, and they are actually claiming those benefits. So, you might have a plan with Deanna and her team that you're going to claim Social Security at a later date, not early on at age, say 62, you log on down the road and, hey, they tell you, guess what? We've been sending you checks for 4 or 5 years. What do you mean? So what we would encourage you to do is just, if you're heading into age 62 or beyond, set up an account, check it on a regular basis. Maybe it's a monthly or quarterly checkup that you do, but something to keep in mind. Tax return fraud, very similar type idea. People are setting up or submitting fake tax returns. I'll just look at the number one bullet point there on how to avoid. We're heading into tax season before the end of the year here, before the filing season starts. Go to www.irs.gov, set up an identity protection PIN. So you set this up on an annual basis. It's only good for a year. You work with your CPA, whoever you do your taxes with, and to submit your taxes, they have to have this PIN. This is the number one way that you can avoid this. There's millions, you see here, over 1 million tax returns were potentially fraudulent as of March of this year. So not even the full filing tax season. Something that happens. The IRS will never call you. I give this presentation. I hear people tell stories almost on a regular basis. I know somebody, or I personally got called by the IRS that I owed them this. I sent them money and I never saw it again. So just, it happens. They'll never call you. You're not going to go to jail if you don't answer that call. Last but not least, so protecting your information, annualcreditreport.com. Again, you can check your report once a year. Enroll in credit monitoring. I said we would kind of circle back to the Equifax number. 145 million users were impacted, had their data breached by Equifax. Only 2% of them signed up for the free credit monitoring that was offered. Many of our credit cards, many of our employer benefits offer free credit monitoring. Go and set that up, take advantage. It's just another safeguard you can put in place. For your kids, your grandkids, your children, 1 in 50 kids were the victims of identity theft. They often don't know for 15, 20 years until they go to actually access their credit down the road. You can freeze your credit, whether you're going to use your credit in the near term, especially for your kids. They most likely have no need for their credit. You see these numbers. Again, we'll send this information to you. But, I just froze my daughter's credit. There's no reason that she needs access to her credit. So all things to keep in mind. Folks, we're barely just scraping the surface. I hope this was beneficial. We'll send you the slides. We'll send you a brochure. But number one thing we can do is just, take a look at some of this, spend some time on it, change passwords, just work with your family, make sure everyone's in line, in communication, and, we are protecting ourselves to the best of the ability we can. With that, I'm going to pass it to Deanna. I know she's putting some safeguards in place for you also.
Thank you so much, Luke. This was incredible information. We did have a question I think you had already answered, but on freezing the credit. And I love your idea of doing that for your kids. It takes no time. So when I went in to do mine, and to set my husband's up, it took me a total of maybe 10 minutes. The things to watch out for is I think there's something quirky about 2 years before you are to turn on Social Security. And then just making sure that if you're going to go buy a new car, get a home loan, you can go and put a pause on the credit freeze. Is very easy, and just say, pause my freeze for 1 month, and that it will automatically unfreeze. But just make sure you keep those passwords somewhere handy, fire safe.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You can still run credit checks, or if you're setting up a new phone bill or something and they need to run a credit check, they can still run a credit check. It doesn't disallow them from doing that. You just can't open up loans and things like that, right? Freezes your credit.
Yeah, so I had mine frozen and I went to a department store and was going to open up a credit card and it wouldn't allow me to do that. So there may be certain things
Yeah.
that it does and doesn't. But again, thank you so much. A few things for us, as I mentioned, we have our annual shred event every year coming up in April. And we are going to be adding those kind of secret code words to our profiles for our clients. This is something that the advisors have on their agenda to ask in upcoming reviews, but if this is something you feel you'd like to get on top of now, you can call the office. Another thing, this is so prevalent right now that our regulators are starting to make the training part of our continuing education. So when I just did my FINRA training over the last month, they were pushing to encourage our clients to have trusted contacts on file. So for that reason, if you think about a natural disaster like the hurricanes or tornadoes, and we don't know or we can't get a hold of you, then the trusted contact is someone that we can call and say, hey, do you know where Sally is? That is not uh, open any information about your accounts to them. They're not allowed to ask any questions. It's just simply, if we can't get a hold of you, having that trusted contact so we know where to find you. Other than that, I think that, Kimani, am I missing anything to cover? Trusted contact, code word, shred event?
Nope. Yep. That was everything on our side. And as Deanna was saying, we do everything that we can, everything that all of our emails and everything that we do with the work with you is all encrypted. It's all protected. And as well, there were a couple questions, Luke, if you have time to answer them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So back to the password slide, and you can tell me if you did mention this already. It'll just be a reiteration if you did. What about password managers like OnePass?
Oh, we did cover
Similar.
that. I thought
Yeah,
I jumped
similar.
into
Go
that.
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, Kimani, I don't know if you heard me go ahead and ask some of the questions in the middle.
Yes, yeah, I didn't hear this one specifically. If you don't mind just answering it really quickly, thank you.
Yeah, the question was, what about the password managers, one pass?
Yes.
So not promoting any one or another, but I did say one pass, keeper, some of the well-known names that I come across frequently. They're all encrypted. Those two are safe password managers from everything I've come to know. But big takeaway there is, I guess, do your own research, make sure that they're not storing your data on hand, and just that everything is encrypted in the way that different password managers go about their business.
And then with considering the emergence of AI, what should people be aware of when they're answering the phone? Like, should they not say their full name unless they know who it is that they're talking to? Should they answer in a certain manner so that they don't, you know, say something wrong or maybe have something being recorded that they're unaware of? What are your thoughts on that?
You know, if it's a number that you don't know or it seems to be a spam call, I have heard to maybe, not say anything when you pick up the phone. Just you're hearing more and more fraudulent stories about people capturing voiceovers from either phone calls or videos that are posted online. So phone calls, maybe limit what you say until you hear them say something or identify themselves if you don't know the number. Or at least if you don't know, like if it's coming through as true spam. I get that there's business and different things, but the videos online, the big thing we just encourage is for you and your loved ones. We all want a big network, but make your network small and keep your posts or your profiles private so that at least if you're putting videos out there, it's not to really anybody that you don't know.
Yeah, it's
Right.
crazy. I always say I wish these people would use their brains for something good in the world, not something bad like
Right.
this, but it's just bound to happen. So Kimani's going to be sending out a replay of the webinar. I think it'd be great if you shared this with your loved ones, friends, family, and just spread the word. Let's get everybody protected. And as Luke mentioned, we'll be sending out some of extra guides, checklists, information to follow up on this. Kimani will get that sent out. So Thank you everyone for joining. And Luke, thanks for sharing all of your knowledge from Eagle and the research that you guys have done. And Kimani, thanks for taking care of our whole tech platform because I'm not good at that. So everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you all.
Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Bye.